They say death knocks only once, but Elias Greven heard it every night. Sometimes softly, like fingers brushing stone, sometimes violently, as if something trapped behind the walls was trying to claw its way into the room. On the night everything began, the sound didn't come from the door at all. It came from inside the tower, from within the walls. Elias lay awake in his bed, breath shallow, listening as the scratching slowly traced a circle around him, patient and deliberate, as though whatever made it already knew there was no escape. When silence finally returned, it felt heavier than noise, and Elias understood with sudden clarity that death was not waiting for him somewhere in the future. It was already nearby, already curious. That was when fear stopped being an emotion and became a presence, sitting at the edge of his thoughts, whispering that time was running out. The city of Velund had long since accepted death as a neighbor. Plague bells rang so often that people no longer flinched. They simply paused, counted the tolls, and continued on with their lives. Bodies were wrapped, marked, and hauled away before the sun reached its highest point. Elias watched all of this from the narrow windows of his alchemical tower, high above the streets, where grief looked smaller, manageable, almost theoretical. He told himself he was different. He was educated, prepared. He had devoted his life to understanding transformation, to bending the rules that governed flesh and matter. He had cured diseases that priests declared divine punishment. He had prolonged lives well beyond their natural limits, and yet none of it mattered when the thought crept in during quiet moments that one day his mind would simply stop, his memories dissolve, his awareness blink out like a candle smothered between careless fingers. The idea terrified him more than pain ever could. "I am not ready," he whispered one evening, staring at his own reflection, noticing for the first time how the lines around his eyes had deepened. "I won't disappear like the rest." That vow carried him down into the depths beneath his tower, into the sealed chamber he had sworn never to open again. The air there was old, stale with incense and rot, and the stone walls seemed damp no matter how often he dried them. Symbols etched into the rock pulsed faintly in torchlight, shapes so old that language itself seemed to recoil from them. At the center of the room rested a single book, bound in human skin, its surface warm to the touch despite the cold. Mortis non finis. Death is not the end. Elias had heard rumors of it as an apprentice, whispered stories of alchemists who vanished after pursuing its knowledge. But desperation has a way of dulling caution. As he turned the pages, the manuscript did not threaten him. It warned him, softly, repeatedly. It spoke of balance, of debts incurred when natural laws were bent, of immortality not as a gift, but as a burden passed from hand to hand. Elias read every word, and then convinced himself he understood it better than the dead ever had. He told himself that warnings were written for lesser minds, for those unable to refine dangerous truths. He began writing notes in the margins, correcting what he believed were exaggerations, smiling as his fear transformed into anticipation. The potion took nearly a year to create, and every step demanded something Elias was reluctant to give. Ash from funerary lilies burned at midnight, mercury distilled from blood taken from the dying, rare herbs harvested from execution grounds, where terror had soaked so deeply into the soil that plants grew twisted and bitter. The final ingredient came last, and Elias hesitated longer than he cared to admit before slicing his palm and letting his blood drip into the mixture. The liquid shimmered, thick and luminous, as though alive. When he finally drank it, agony tore through him so violently that he collapsed, screaming, clawing at stone as his body convulsed. Bones cracked, lungs seized. For a brief, horrifying moment, Elias believed he had miscalculated and died alone in that chamber, his great defiance ending in obscurity. Then the pain stopped, completely. Hours later, he rose, breath calm, heartbeat steady, skin smooth and unblemished. He cut himself experimentally and watched the wound knit shut before the blood could spill. Days passed, weeks. His reflection did not change. Time seemed to slide off him, unable to find purchase. "I did it," he whispered, laughter trembling in his throat. "I escaped." At first, immortality felt like vindication, like proof that fear could be conquered through intellect. Elias walked the city openly, noticing how different the world looked when the future no longer threatened him. He slept deeply, dreamed vividly, and began planning projects that would take decades, centuries even. But subtle things began to shift. Animals shied away from him. Dogs whimpered when he passed. Candles flickered and died without reason. Mirrors fogged, even in dry air, as though his presence disrupted something fundamental. At night, the scratching returned, closer now, more deliberate. Whispers slipped through the walls, voices layered atop one another, murmuring the same phrase in different tones. "You owe us." Elias barricaded his doors and immersed himself in calculations, insisting this was merely a side effect, a temporary imbalance. All great discoveries had costs. That was when the visitors appeared, without sound or warning, standing in his laboratory as if they had always belonged there. 3 figures, their forms unstable, flesh thinning into smoke, bones visible one moment and gone the next. The tallest spoke without moving its mouth, its voice echoing directly inside Elias's skull. "You drank what was not yours." Elias fell to his knees, offering gold, knowledge, anything, his voice breaking as he promised restitution. The second figure leaned close and whispered that he had already offered his soul. He simply hadn't noticed when. When they vanished, they left behind a cracked mirror, and in its fractured surface Elias saw himself far in the future, still alive, body twisted and malformed, eyes wide with endless terror. Time resumed its cruel march. Years passed. The city changed. Kings rose and fell. Elias remained. His body refused death, but it did not remain whole. Injuries healed incorrectly, nerves dulled, and then screamed without cause. Pain became constant, a low hum beneath every thought. He could not sleep without dreaming of decay. People began avoiding his tower. Rumors spread that he was cursed, that his presence brought sickness. Children cried when his shadow crossed theirs. Elias tried to end it. Fire, poison, blade, but his body stubbornly repaired itself every time, forcing him to endure existence without relief. He returned to the manuscript, desperate, only to find its pages blank, as though the knowledge had withdrawn itself, satisfied. The whispers grew louder. The scratching became pounding. At last, broken and trembling, Elias prepared a final ritual, not to extend his life, but to surrender it. The chamber shook as blood ran upward along the walls, and the cracked mirror opened like a wound in reality. The tall figure returned and spoke the truth Elias had avoided all along. Death had never been his enemy, fear was. Elias stepped forward, ready to pay any price, but the entity's final words froze him in place. It was never just yours to pay. When the tower collapsed and Elias Greven finally died, the world did not heal. The potion he had sold, the cures he had shared, the fragments of immortality scattered in his desperation began to awaken elsewhere. Men and women across lands and centuries found themselves unable to die, trapped in endless suffering, their pains stretching on long after hope had rotted away. Death reclaimed its debt, not in mercy, but in interest. And so Elias's story is still told, not as a warning against dying, but as a reminder whispered in fear and candlelight, that escaping the end is far more terrifying than facing it, because death is merciful, but consequences are eternal.